Коллеги.
Dear colleagues, my name is Yana Gogol. I'm a general director. I don't like it when it's close. I'm a general director for Undergone company, and today I must admit this is a very big event for us. 18 years ago I left to Germany from Moscow, and already then I had a dream to come here with the business and bring the benefits that I was able to create in Germany, bring them to Moscow. And now this event is happening, so I'm super happy to be here and really happy to be presenting our product. And Martin, I adore all of you because you have made a career in the quality area, and I think that focusing on quality is the best way to create value for the community and help the companies we work with to become better. This is why 12 years ago Undergone company was focused on testing automation and test management. And this is why we have created Aqua based on more than 800 projects for testing automation and testing in most of the biggest companies of Germany. So this is always based on the practical experience. I thank all the organizers who have made possible this conference and made for us possible to come from all over the world and exchange experience so that you could learn. And I wish you all to make a great career in testing. I wish you all to become great specialists and help your customers make the quality their main competitive advantage. Martin will be now talking about how we do this, how we can speed this up, and we brought a small gift, a headset that we will give to one of you who sends the TestCon 2019 message to my number, and will get a prize on our stand. We'll be super happy to talk to you all and tell you everything about we know and probably become partners in the future.
So, quick word to myself. Thanks, Jana. Martin Koch's the name. Like Jana said, I'm the head of product. Sometimes all over the world too. And more information you can find under this URL, so please take a look. So what is Aqua in a very few words? It's a test management suite first. Project management, agile planning, and a lot of test automation benefits for orchestrating a lot of things from DevOps pipelines to regular automation tools like Selenium and all the other stuff that's currently on the market. We are very good in reporting. I would say it's the best reporting suite on the market for the QA division. And yeah, so that's all very tightly integrated, not only in itself, but also with other solutions like the Jira suite, very popular all over the world. So, okay. What am I speaking about today is the challenging QA that leads us to the DevOps cycle today. And it's very easy to forget that QA and IT is not a means unto itself, but it serves to drive the business. And of course, being a business, it's always limited in time constraints and on the financial side. So So how can we solve this? So the need for speed. We need to be fast to react to the cycles and the competition that are moving on today. We take a look at the system's complexity. How are the systems built today compared to 10 years, 20 years ago? I think they are rising. And not only these, but also the number of platforms we need to envision. So there's multiple mobile platforms, multiple browsers we need to push through QA, and including IoT devices, it even spreads out further and further. And not only that, if you take a look at microservice architecture, suddenly, which was one homogeneous big application, becomes a lot of different applications with a lot of APIs to connect and to check in your integration tests. And so, how are the number of testers rising with these developments? I would say they rather stay the same. We don't get that much more QA capabilities or manpower to solve these rising complexities. So the developers themselves, they have the same problems, and they solved it by using the DevOps pipeline. The release cycles, they really sped them up or shortened them down, you could say, which means that 10 years before, if I had a new release planned, it would be like 5 months in the future, or 3 months, or 2 years, or something like that. Today, you have multiple releases per day. Evidently, you can't use the same QA practices like you did those times. You need to get faster. Again, the developers, they solved this. They pushed closer together with the operations teams to get from development to DevOps. And of course, they used Agile to be more flexible and to faster get the changes that the business needs. So how can we speed up our QA processes? How can we keep the speed that the developers are moving forward with? And I think you've all seen this this loop before, and I think it's a little bit easier to understand if I unroll it. So what I'm speaking about today is mostly going to be continuous testing, but it starts at the bottom. Agile development, we're faster to plan, to code, and build in shorter release cycles. Then we have a continuous integration solution, tools like Jenkins that build the solution itself, and they run the first unit tests. But with continuous testing, we need to be moving forward with this and integrate more and more testing capabilities into our pipeline. What this means, I'm going to into details a little bit later on. Pushing this out into a running environment, you're at continuous delivery. And the whole cycle, we call DevOps, and I'm sure you all heard this before. So what we want is continuous testing, and this is because we get faster feedback. That means that if something changes on the code level, and this is here something called environment trigger tests, so the developer does any code changes. He checks it into the source code management solution, the source repository, and this lets the continuous integration server do its thing. It starts a build job, but also the test jobs. And from there on, you get a very fast result, of course, depending on your tests and how you set them up, to the developers to see what they did, if it changed anything to the better or to the worse. And so one thing that the DevOps pipeline does is these environment-triggered things, stemming from the source code change. Of course, we still need from QA the ability to push a certain test cycle and to start this to get our results that we need to do, that we need to have also. So at the end of a test cycle or a release cycle, I need to have all this information ideally in one big PDF or one big report that I can hand over to management and give them a go or a no-go for the solution that we built. So we need automated tests to have this speed. This could be unit tests, server tests, UI tests. I'm going to more detail in a few slides later on. And we need to integrate with this DevOps pipeline. So when I'm speaking about automated testing, I don't mean the classic automated testing we have in a lot of places today, which is you write your integration tests, for example, you run them, you run your automated integration tests, you check for the results, then you write your acceptance test script, run this, the performance testing and all that, one after each other. So you don't have the fast results and the fast feedback that you need to move with the certainty and the results you get to have the speed that we are looking for. So continuous testing means that I have all these things before in place. I have the code for the integration and all the other tests run, and if something happens, like I showed before on the developer pipeline, It's going to trigger the build and the automated tests, being it integration, acceptance, or performance testing. So anything in this pipeline changes at the start, we need to have our tests being run automatically. So the test pyramid. I've shown you before that we have a stack of UI tests or end-to-end tests, you could call them, a service layer and unit tests before. And this is to be thought about as the ideal setup of having a huge amount of unit testing, a smaller amount of service testing, and then the end-to-end and UI testing and manual testing on top, with being only a smaller percentage of over the overall testing efforts that we're doing. So this is the ideal picture. Most often it looks pretty much the other way around, which is like this, and I call it, I think, a ice cream cone of testing. At the top, we have more integration. We have the big processes that we're testing end-to-end. We're testing this from the user perspective, from the UI part itself. And it goes through all the systems that are involved in that. On the other part, we have more isolation and taking only a very small functionality into account with the unit testing. So these are, of course, doing different things. And we could say that on a unit testing level, we're kind of checking, are we building the code right? It's not necessarily the thing that the business layer wants. They also need to check, are we building the right code? Does this deliver the value for the organization that we're looking for? And the other thing is, which makes the unit tests very popular on the development side, is that they're much, much faster than running, of course, like a manual test or an end-to-end test integrating with different tools, or the UI part being it with scripting tools or other tools. And also, interestingly, if you take a look at the top, these tests are more brittle, so they break more easily. They can be broken by smaller changes in the UI framework or anything like that, and you have to reconnect them, rebuild them. The benefit is they simulate a real user, and you get the best results in regards to the organization's needs. So if you build them smart, you make them less brittle. What is the test pyramid in more detail? So I spoke about its manual tests, its automated end-to-end tests, and its UI tests in the upper part. In the service layer, we have API testing, integration tests, and of course the component tests. Unit test stays the same. I would say it's more on the developer level. What kind of tools can you use for that? So going from the bottom to the top, there's of course unit testing for all the languages in use today. TestNG, Mockitty is mine, is also quite popular. For the API integration, I think it's good to run something like SOAP UI, Rest Assured. Postman is very popular in our organization, or stuff like Cucumber and Fitness. Taking a look at the upper part, something that Aqua does is very good is the automation part, but also the manual part, and moving from one to the other. Aqua also includes all the other testing parts and interacts with them, which is important for us. We see this is not only a singular thing, and it's not only managing manual testing, but to get most of the information and benefits if you get all this information in one place, and faster results for our QA parts and leads. So, granularity of tests. You should write them in a different granularity. So the more high-level tests you get, the fewer tests you should have. So that's the same as the pyramid, if you could say. And I think one interesting part is if you find a bug, if you get a failure in a high-level test, not only have you a bug in your functional code, you also have a missing or incorrect unit tests. So I would advise to fix this bug exposed by this high-level test. So the next time you show that unit test, make sure that it stays dead. How can we build end-to-end tests? So I would really recommend that if you're trying to do end-to-end testing and you have multiple UI parts, split them up in smaller components and then combine them to a bigger thing. So you don't have one huge test that is likely to fail if anything changes, but that you have components and script parts that you can reference in your bigger end-to-end tests, so that you have only to fix a small part if anything changes in your UI or the framework that you're using. So I think there are two approaches in working with UI testing anyway, which is either it's kind of fire and forget, you very quickly record the test. If anything changes, record it again. Don't worry about making it smart, but you need to be very fast in recording it. There's a few things where you can't do this, when the UI isn't that nice to automate, I would say. And then you need to get smarter testing. And I think it's also a very good approach to have a test that is more robust if anything changes underneath. For that you need something like object repositories, so that the recording or the scripting might stay the same if something moves around on the UI. How you find the objects that you're referencing, to use smarter paths, IDs, and all the other fancy stuff that you can do in scripting to get this to be more robust. In the end, it means that you write code, and here you record. And last but not least, the tool matters, of course. What you use might hugely impact how much time you need to spend in modifying and maintaining your tests. So, key takeaways so far, which is automation. That's really what we need, and we need to integrate this with the DevOps pipeline. Make good use of unit tests. Don't omit them, and don't only start from the top of this pyramid, but make sure that you get them in your organization. They're cheaper, they're more focused, they're easier to maintain. And if the bug is fixed, let them write a unit test to make sure it stays fixed. Really helps up your regression testing. End-to-end testing, UI testing can be very expensive and hard to maintain. Good software, and I know what I'm speaking about, can really help you with this. And it allows you to do this compartmentalization where you have a smaller part of a bigger test suite that you can only then combine, maybe like Lego bricks together, and then stack them up more and more. And yeah, invest in good test data. There's a little bit more later on to this. How can we manage all this? So Aqua provides a way from manual to automated testing. It's always smart to start with the manual tests. And with Aqua, we managed to do the unit testing part, the components integration, API tests, and of course, a really big part, to have smart tools in your hands to do good end-to-end testing and all the orchestration and combination that it needs to allow you this. So, how do we move from manual to automated tests? I would really recommend write your manual test first before you start automating. So you know what you want to achieve, or you know what you want to run this later on. And with Aqua, we went away where it's very easy to combine these two to use these two approaches with. So on one hand, I have an area where I can define my manual test. It's all laid out here, and just switching over to automate it. You have the possibility to directly integrate your script, which is then stored with this test case as a reusable script. And anytime you run the test case, you can directly run this automation script itself. There's multiple technologies that we are able to connect with the solution. More on this later. So it also allows you to get a better traceability. So starting out from a user story or a requirement, you get to the manual test case, you get to the automation script, and further on to the bug tracking that you're using here. This is all done in Aqua, and it allows you to get a better oversight about where you're missing things, or if anything changes, what you need to fix and to adopt and to maintain. So, to get to this DevOps pipeline, how do we do this? So we want to have all our test results in one place. We want to have the environment trigger tests running from the source code check-in. And we also want to have the traditional testing and stuff that we're starting from the QI department itself. So unit service, UI, and end-to-end tests together. And the idea is just to connect your test management solution, which ideally manages your automated tests, with your continuous integration with the complete DevOps pipeline. With Aqua, we provide a way to do this. You can build this up all yourself, and you can use different tools Aqua provides here a turnkey solution, so you don't need to invest time in setting this all up, but it's very easily configurable. So one part is we could go from a plugin and get the unit test, we get from the CI environment and get the unit test results directly in test management. The idea is to have more traceability and to have a big holistic reporting where I get all the information from all these sources. Not only my manual testing, my automated test data I'm starting, but also anything on the unit testing level. Again, put more resources on the unit testing or more efforts. And if you do this, you want to have also, of course, the results in your reporting and your overview, how well the application is proceeding or is being tested. The other way around, if you're maintaining and managing test automation in your test management suite, like Aqua does, you want to also trigger this through this pipeline, which is an important part. So this allows me to have all the benefits of a very nice script management and test case management in the management suite. And save time and doing this and have clear understanding who's going to change what, who's going to be responsible for what, and what are the changes that led to a certain behavior. But of course I want to have this triggered for these fast results that we want for the developers and ourselves that are triggered from any source code check-in. An example could be something like we could trigger from a Jenkins environment, like for example a test script that first does a database script which maybe pushes data into our test database. Maybe we have another Selenium script which creates a new customer, and then another Selenium script, again compartmentalized, which tests for a buying process. And afterwards, we can see if the results are fine from an API standpoint and take a look through SoapUI or other test tools that are all managed from one test management solution like Aqua. So on Aqua, we can press play and have these tools being integrated and, being run and getting all the results in one place. And with the Jenkins integration, I can have this triggered from outside and also have the results in both solutions. Okay, so I'm running out of time. Let's speed up. Of course, we can do this all the way around. We can start from our management solution build jobs, which makes it lives easier for us. We can deploy a system under test to the environment where you can test it. How do you configure this? For us, it's just a plugin that we put in, and then I can reference a test scenario. A scenario is just a bunch of test cases which might have all the associated automation information behind that, multiple scripts, test data, and all other things that we need to run the tests. A quick DevOps example for this might be we might trigger a job in Jenkins, which does a Git checkout, so it gets the sources from the source code management. It builds the system under test, executes the unit tests, and then deploys the solution to a server. It might then trigger functional testing in the management suite, which might be, again, a stack of tools that are running in a sequential order that we defined before. We have the results also then in the management solution. Can obtain them in our reporting or review them however we want. So we don't need to hunt for any log files that are somewhere spread around the system on the test server or anything like that. We have them right there where we're working daily anyway. And anything that we do from the build pipeline, from the DevOps pipeline, we get also in dedicated tests in Aqua also reported. So this allows us to do this holistic reporting that we're looking for. To manage all these different tools, we came up with something called agents, which are kind of like services that manage the test tools for yourself. So what they do is just they wait for a task from the management solution, and if they get a job to be processed, they get all the script information, the test data, files you need for comparison, like I don't know, an XML file, a log file, anything like that. They execute the test in the test tool. They might run an Appium test, Selenium, whatever you want to do there. Monitor the execution, so you have live feedback during the execution. You get back results like screenshots, log files, anything like that. You can see how your test progressed in your test management solution. And in the end, they make life easier for you. I've seen a few teams build up technology like that yourselves. Of course, you can do this. Anything's possible in IT. It's just the amount of time you need to invest to get to a tool stack as fast as this. So we built up integrations for a lot of solutions beforehand. Jenkins I spoke about, but also from going from the database level to different automation tools. So this is only an excerpt. This is not all the tools that we have in place here, but a few of those mostly used at the customers we're facing. And again, Jira, it's very seldom I see a customer which doesn't use Jira in some place. We also have a plugin dedicated to Jira. First of all, with Aqua, we have a bi-directional synchronization of both solutions. So anything you do in Jira, you have also the information in the Aqua suite, and the other way around. But we also have a dedicated plugin, so you can access all your test cases in the Jira suite, start them up and get the results also in regards to a certain user story requirement, defect, or anything like that. So if we build up this continuous testing, is everything fine? Are we good then so far? And I would say not really, because it's something that I've seen a lot automation teams facing, which is flaky tests. So what's a flaky test? Or maybe let's step back a moment. So there's already a lot of tension often between the QA and development parts. So the cooperation with devs can be quite difficult because nobody likes to hear that they did something wrong. And I think it works on my machine. Everybody heard this at some point in their life. And debating about, is the test broken or is the code broken, I've seen this also happen quite a lot of time. So what can lead to even more tension is a scenario like that the dev checks in new source code. The automated tests run on every checking like we want them to. So the test results then show a bunch of failures. They check their code for defects or for any changes that they need to make. And then they realize that the failures were in the automated test themselves and not the code that they have written. So they spend a lot of time searching and debugging just to notice that the test itself was wrong. So you can get feedback like that from them, and it might lead to a loss of faith into the QA department and the results that you're pushing to them. And it's very true that it's much more difficult to regain lost trust and build it up in the first place. So these things, flaky tests, they are unreliable tests, and they are tests that sometimes they are fine, sometimes they fail, and then they run green again, all being the same test without any changes to your test script. So they show you randomly occurring problems. The problem with these problems is that you don't know where they occur. That might be in the system under test or in your test scripts. But be sure that these are poison, and you need to fix them fast. And if they're in your scripts, I really recommend to fix them before you push out defects or results to someone who can't handle them. Because if this gets established, then they're not going to trust your results and just going to go live anyway without any necessary feedback you have in there. So let's jump quickly to another topic, test data. Don't skimp on good test data. It saves you a lot of time later if you invest the time at the first step. So you could have something like a script that writes test data to your environment, runs the test, and later on it cleans up the used data. Because if you don't, you get situations like these guys here. So I've seen this in a lot of organizations. They have their own set of data. They push their scripts through or the manual testing, and then they get into conflicts when someone used up their other test data, or you're hunting for a problem or reporting a bug where there is none just because the test data has already been used up. So how do you get good test data? First, I would be grab it from production and then clear up the sensitive parts and anonymize anything that you want to have being used in the QA department. And the other part might be you can create this with dedicated tools and then have maybe dynamic parts in the test data itself. Again, this is something that Aqua can do for you. If you have smart dynamic test data that maybe gets you something like the date of today plus a week that you can use then in your test scripts, being it manual or automated. Again, don't underestimate the value of good test data. So I would also recommend, if you go agile with your development teams, go agile with your QA department. That means that use it as your tool for your day-to-day tasks. Organize who's going to write the script, maintain something, or research a new technology in an agile environment. Use this on a whiteboard or a digital tool like Aqua provides you. So anything that you need to do, try to make this part of your culture in the QA department too. It helps to have a better understanding and even maybe better than integration of work sharing with the development teams and the QA teams. So I'm reaching the end of my talk here, and there's one last thing I wanted to show you that we were quite proud of, and sadly I had never the time to have someone check if the result that I get in here is the right one. So what do I show you here? Which is, we're seeing in the market a lot of companies that are working in multinational teams, which leads to having multiple languages being employed in the teams that they're using. So with Aqua, we're investing a lot of time, first and all, in AI, but also working with state-of-the-art AI companies. And one thing we built up with this is an Aqua machine translation functionality, which means that if I have a requirement or a test script, anything like that, a defect, whatever you want to have, then you can click the small button on the right-hand side here, and it gets your translation to a bunch of languages. I think it's like 10 today, and it shows you this. So I'm interested in what the results were. How good is the result on the right-hand side? Is this understandable for you? I never had someone check. I wanted to ask you. It's understandable? All right. Okay, so that's my last 5 minutes where I wanted to enable you to ask more questions to me. Any questions? Yeah? This is so powerful, I would have to have a new organization or a new company all in place with this. So we are searching and doing a lot of an AI space and machine learning, but this one here is in combination with a company called DeepL, and it is being led by an ex-development lead in our organization, and he's a very, very smart guy, and they're currently the best in the world. So from Google, Microsoft, and it's better by far. So I think it's quite usable. You can push something through Google Translate or something like that, but in the end, I'm often more hesitant to trust these things to be understandable and not maybe to lead in conflict further down the road. But I think with this, we have a technological breakthrough that allows you to really use this in a day-to-day business.
Is the test passing information stored in your product and available in your product? So is the scenario information and launch information
die damit verbunden sind die innerhalb von unserem Produkt inklusiv oder sind die, kann man die irgendwo anders ablegen?
So, yes, they are in Aqua. Could you put them somewhere else? I guess so. I must say, mostly when I'm speaking with customers, I'm showing them the ease of use for this. So what Aqua does is, it has this container we call a test scenario, which is, first of all, a list of test cases. A test case can be a manual test case, an automated test case, and it can have its own set of test data. So it allows me to build up a container where I have all the tests I need to test maybe a certain test object, or maybe all the tests I want to run in the current sprint or the next sprint. And I can also then assign these test cases to certain people and say, okay, these guys are responsible for the UI test, these guys are going to do the API testing, and these ones are going to acceptance testing by doing manual testing. And they're very quite powerful, and I think the best way is really to show them in the solution itself, which I can gladly do today or tomorrow at our booth there before. And there's interdependence between those test cases. Should another test case start if the predecessor was failing, or how many test cases do you want to use for test data? There's a lot of things you can do with them. Excuse me? Over. So out of the box, Aqua integrates test tools to use these, testing these protocols. So I personally haven't heard of those protocols before, but I'm very sure that with the technology stack that we have connected with Aqua, we can test this. And I'm saying with confidence that this is true because we're working with a lot of financial institutions. I would say they're one of the best customers because they make use of all the benefits that we provide, which is having a solid automation, solid reporting, any changes that are done in the system automatically protocoled so you can review them later. And we have done interesting interactions with protocols, with having a test run for multiple machines and sites and interacting with something. We would start, for example, there was a trading protocol on a trading platform, and the bigger German company does. I'm missing a few English words to translate this aptly, but nevertheless, we started a process that was UI driven. Then in the back end, we interacted with calls that need to be checked against. We extracted UIs and, IDs that we needed to call another service. So all this being live during the testing. And then later on, it spanned over, I think, 3 or 4 tools. Then there was a manual process where someone, an agent in the software, had to confirm something, that this transaction was valid, and then it ran through some other systems that we tested through API testing. And it was all custom protocols that we had to do there, at least custom protocols from our point of view, which were standard, I think, in this trading space. But again, if you could write me down what these protocols are called, I can check this with our consulting and automation teams if we have something like this already in place. It might very well be that we have existing scripts that you can use for that. You're welcome.
Could you please give some examples of a successful implementation of your product, integration with some development project? And the second question is pricing, of course. Do you have some prices, etc.?
Yes, we don't hide the prices. If you take a look at the website, I can go over to the website before, and you can find all the prices that you want to see there. Let me scroll. So this one is, we don't hide the prices, you can find them there, and it allows you to have the right part of the solution for the right people that you want to work with. If you have a manual tester, they don't need all the same capabilities like maybe a test manager or a project manager, and Aqua is very flexible in the licensing for these people. There's even a free license. You can have people reviewing bugs or running a manual test case without having to pay any money for that. So it allows you to roll the solution up in a very big way in the company. So the first part of your question, I'm not 100% sure I understood you right, but you asked if we have integrations with other software tools, testing tools, or with other organizational parts. Could you maybe rephrase it?
Whatever you want to share with us.
Oh, okay. That might be quite a little more time.
Мартин, скажите по-русски, может быть, я уточню. Я здесь.
Martin, if you wish, you can say in Russian. Do you speak Russian?
So einfach ein paar Kundenbeispiele.
Yeah, sure. So maybe one of the interesting ones in the past few months was there's very big financial IT services company in Germany. They provide services to, I would say, like 120 financial institutions, which is insurances, banking, houses. And they were using a quality center setup, Micro Focus IAM is called today, and they have been running this for like 15 years or something like that. And they had a lot of integrations with different tool sets that they have in place, which is automation, which is integration with other tools. They have a very diverse tool stack, from having rational tools for requirements engineering, Jira somewhere in place, different automation technologies. And they replaced the complete Micro Focus and quality center setup and removed this and replaced this with Aqua. But the important part is without any loss of data. So any results that they had over these 15 years, which is quite a lot of data, they had really millions of executions and I think even millions of test cases and items all in that solution. And so they, as a financial institution in Germany, they needed to provide accountability of any testing that they did the last 10 years. So they need to retain their test results. So anything that they have ever tested in the past, they need to get all information. Who did this? What steps did they do? What were the results? And what kind of bug occurred from that? What kind of requirement was there behind that? And all this data, test cases, requirements, executions, performance testing scripts, all that jazz has been moved into the Aqua space. And of course, then we also integrated with the tool stack that they have in place. So that the existing setup that they're using can be done today, but it can be done easier and faster. Any last question?
Very good question. Очень хороший вопрос. Чем мы тестируем? Womit testen wir Aqua selbst?
Oh, that's a better question to be posed to our head of QA. They're using a bunch of different technologies, and this stems from a few facts. So first of all, we're dog fooding. So we're using, of course, Aqua to manage our own tests. This gives us the best benefits that I spoke about before. Then there's the question, what kind of test automation tools do we use for this? I think they switched from Ranorex to Selenium for a lot of the UI-facing parts. I know they love Postman for the REST API testing. We have a huge amount of SOAP UI tests in, and these are the ones that I saw the last time I was speaking with them. I don't really monitor what they're using, because there's another interesting part of the company I'm working for, which is part of the Endagon family, and there's two parts. One is the solution I also spoke about today, Aqua. The other part is there's a lot of consultants that go to the customers and help them establish a test strategy, what is the best way to test automate, what is the best tool to use. And these guys are always researching what is the best test automation tool today on the market. And they bring a lot of feedback back from the customers about a solution and about the test tools that they're using. So there's a lot of groups that are trying out different tools in conjunction with Aqua, and they get different feedback of this is beneficial to us, or is this something that only makes sense for a SAP using customer or something like that. So I can get back to this question and ask the QA team what is the latest thing that they're doing and what is their recommendation if you want to. So please join us at the booth and I can get this information to you. Thank you.